Hey guys, this is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will coming at you with another deck profile. This one was actually highly requested by a lot of you guys after you saw that duel with me versus Scott, where I was playing the, as you can see here, the Alhama'at Prokaryotic Being deck, and then Scott was playing that Gill deck that was created by DMO73. So I just wanted to go over that deck, show you guys what it was all about, show you guys my little brew for it. So first things first, of course, the ruler that we have here is Alhama'at. Alhama'at being probably one of my favorite rulers in the game right now. He judgments for 0, but only if he has 7 or more mana counters on him. He energizes for black or white, comes with 1 mana counter on him, and you can remove a mana counter, produce any color. You can use those colors only to play Ancient Magics. And then he resonates for a light or darkness magic stone, and you put a mana counter on him every time you get one of those stones into play. I've kind of gone over Alhama'at before, and honestly in this deck you really won't go to the second side or the third side because he judgments twice, so I'll kind of just give a brief overview for now. Of course, he can judgment once, it becomes a 1,000,000 flyer with very similar effects to his front side, and then he judgments into the only fold out ruler in the game, and it's just, you're probably never going to go to that side. I did it once just as a fluke, but it's not of common occurrence at all. So moving on to the stone lineup. Stones are a little not really super basic for Alhama'at, but the basic ones for Alhama'at are the Ancient Magic stones. Basically just having stones that can produce any mana is really, really good, and it's really nice to have these, especially because of the fact that this is sort of like a 4-color deck. If you don't have the right colors that you need at the right time, you have mana counters to adjust what you're playing. From there we also play 4 Magic Stone of Scorched Bales, because this is a mainly black-red deck with a little bit of white, a little bit of blue. We also play Ebon, Magic Stone of the Ebon Home to complement that. Basically just another one of these stones that you have to pay for, but it also removes the top card of your opponent's deck. So sometimes you can get really lucky and hit like their win condition, so that can be kind of fun, but most of the time this is just another thing to round out the fire count. And then the last 2 are Magic Stone of Dark Depth. Again, you're not going to have a lot of blue stuff in this deck other than maybe Keez's Call. Obviously, Prokaryotic Being needs one of these, but can also just go off of that. But this is just kind of to round out your mana base and make sure if you need blue at a certain time, you can potentially hit blue. Moving on to the deck. This is a 42-card deck with 7 Resonators and 35 Chants. So, of course, we'll go over the Resonators first. The first of which is Explorer on Mount Hoelle. This card is actually... I really like this card. A lot of people started comparing it originally to Muse Celestial Music, which is definitely an apt comparison, but the difference between Muse and Explorer is that Explorer, well, first of all, can only hit chance. Muse can hit really anything. But with her, you get a 7/5 body instead of a 4/6 body. While the 4/6 body is technically harder to kill and has the effect that, if anything, doesn't take full damage, it doesn't take damage at all, Explorer is actually kind of a relevant aggressive threat due to that 700 attack stat. And pairing a lot of these on the field, getting chance off the top of your deck, if they're Ancient Magic chance, you get like basically free advantage from her. Just a very, very good card. In this deck especially. It's not that great if you're playing a Resonator heavy deck, but if you're playing a deck that's kind of gimmicky like this one, she does a lot of work. Speaking of gimmicks, we have Prokaryotic Being. Definitely one of my favorite cards, just due to the reference in its name and the fact that it is a scaling Resonator based on going into the late game of a chant-heavy deck, which is really strange when you think about it, but Prokaryotic Being, if you don't know what it does, it's a 2-mana 0/0 that gains +200/+200 for each chant in your graveyard. We play 35, so the maximum he'll ever be is at 7,000, which is absurd. He has 2 other effects where if you pay red, he gains swiftness until end of turn, and if you play blue, he gets flying until end of turn, both of which are fantastic abilities, of course. And the last card we have in here is Shade, Envoy of Darkness. Just a really good Resonator to round out the count. If you need to go into the late game, and if you don't want to just constantly get rid of your chance in the graveyard, his Resonance effect lets you pay 3 to add him back to your hand. Just good recurring damage, recurring life gain as well, is really strong for a control deck like this. So just one shade. You don't want to get 2 of them because you'll mess up your chant count, and occasionally you don't want your Explorers to miss. I think the only time I've ever missed with Explorer was revealing Explorer off the top. And moving on to chants, there are a lot of them. So we're going to start off with our Ancient Magics. First things first, we have Viola's Machinations. This is, in Alhama'at, it's essentially a free discard, which is fantastic. Your opponent discards a card. If your J-Rule has mana, you put a mana counter on it. One game, when I was doing testing for this deck, I ended up opening up with 4 of these and a Scorn of Dark Alice, and I ended up wiping my opponent's hand on the first turn and basically retaining all of my advantage, and then using Ancient Knowledge to get my hand back up to size next turn. So, needless to say, I won that game pretty quickly. But this card's just fantastic for a lot of reasons, and it's just really good to cycle through and be another fodder for your Prokaryotic Being. From there, more fodder-ish, we have 4 Ancient Heartfelt Fire. Free 400 damage is really nice, and the ability to ramp up your mana counters is great. This card is actually how I ended up doing the Double Judgment in one game when I was testing this deck. So, not much else to say about it. If you're playing Alhama'at, this card is fantastic. Moving on from there, 4 Ancient Knowledge. Ancient Knowledge is just so good in Alhama'at decks, especially in decks that don't need you to have a lot of mana counters at one time. It's really good for the fact that just as you go into the late game, the fact that at any time you can just remove 4 mana counters, draw 2 cards by looking at the top 5, sink back anything you don't need at the time. A lot of the time you'll put back your Prokaryotic Being just because they're only really good in the late game. So this card gives you a ton of knowledge about what you're going to be drawing later in the game and what you need for the current time. And then we have 2 more Ancient Magics in the form of Erasure and Steam Explosion. Erasure is just fantastic removal. It is completely unrestricted removal for anything. This deck was originally created when Priscilla was pretty high up in the metagame, so having an instant answer to her, before she starts wreaking havoc on her J-Ruler side is great. And then having Steam Explosion there just to end games if you start ramping up your counters is also a fantastic option. So the Ancient Magics are obviously Alhama'at's biggest strength, and if you're playing Alhama'at, some combination of this is normally what you'll see from me, and again, there's plenty of variations to do on these counters just because Alhama'at can produce anything for all of them. So moving on to the non-Ancient Magic chants, we have 3 Nameless Mist. Again, discard's just really good. Cheap chants are very important for this deck, especially to get your Explorers and Prokaryotic Beings going. So this is definitely a good starting point. From there, the Scorn of Dark Alice is great. Just having the ability to remove anything you need at any time from their hand is super good. Past that, got a couple of blue spells as well in the form of Keez's Call. Again, in this deck's original creation, Fox was really powerful in the meta. I know that we have people thinking about using the ban list where Griffin is no longer available, so this card hits less things going forward with that ban list. But if you're facing a metagame that still has Fox in it, this card's fantastic. From there we also have Spinning Aquasol. This was a kind of a last-minute addition to the deck. Spinning Aquasol is just a really fantastic card where, because a lot of your chants can be activated for free, free quote-unquote with Alhama'at's ability, being able to add them back at any time and just recycle any of those cards is a really sick play, especially going into the late game. Because this not only is a really cheap chant that gets things back, that just goes into your graveyard and fuels your Prokaryotic Being, but it also just enables you to get back your powerhouse cards, especially if you start ramping up your mana counters. So definitely a really cool card. Going forward, I think I would put more blue sources in if I was going to make a focus on this card, but for what it did, it was really good. Next on the chance is Death at Midnight. Really good non-targeting removal. If you're facing like a mid-range or a control-based deck, having the ability to just quick cast, get rid of whatever their threat is unbelievably good. So just a really good card. Again, cheap quick cast chance, always good for this deck. Speaking of cheap quick cast chance, we had 4, 3 Amaterasu's Foresight, excuse me. Again, preventing damage from J Resonators is unbelievably good, especially because most of your damage will come from either chance or from killing your opponent with Prokaryotic Being, so having this card to just make sure that you can live until you get to do your big finishing plays is really, really good. So definitely recommend this. Potential thing of bumping it up to 4, but again, this deck will definitely need more testing past that. We have Crimson Ray. Crimson Ray was kind of my sort of a shade substitute since I didn't want to run 8 Resonators. I felt like the 7 count was really good, but I still wanted to double up on Shade's effect. Crimson Ray doing that as a quick cast chant is really, really good. Again, it powers up Prokaryotic Being. I didn't see it too much during most of the times I was playing with this deck, but whenever I saw it, it did its job pretty well. It can deal damage to face, which is really nice, especially if you start whittling them down with Explorer and getting them to the point where Steam Explosion can kill them. Crimson Rays is really good for a lot of that. And survivability, because it gives you life. From there we put in 2 Severing Winds. This deck basically plays no green except for if you're going to be using your Ancient Magic Stones for it, but I definitely would not hold your breath on that. Most of the time you're just going to hold on to these so that you can immediately cancel something that your opponent's trying to do, especially if they're trying to combo you out in the late game. Of course, Alhama'at is just like a really fantastic late game deck, but in order to get to that late game, you need stoppers like Foresight and then also Severing Winds. And the last 2 chants are just kind of like round out the deck kind of chants. One is Schrodinger's Observation, which is kind of like another pseudo Steam Explosion, where instead of just dealing damage to a Resonator and their face, you also get to heal off of it. Again, good chant, helps you go into the late game, helps you survive in the late game. Really good choice there. And then the last chant is Eternal Recurrence. In case you face Swarm, in case you face somebody who's trying to overwhelm you with a lot of pretty decently sized Resonators, Eternal Recurrence is a fantastic removal option for that. Throughout every game I played with Alhama'at, I never saw this card, and if I did, normally I Ancient Knowledged it back to the bottom of the deck. So this might be a spot I could cut for another Foresight, but again, much more testing will have to be done comparing the two, and I'll have to face a lot of other decks before I know what the choice is there. And with that, that is 42 cards, 7 Resonators, 35 chants. Again, point of the deck. Let's bring him back out because he is the star of the show. Puny Eukaryotic Beings. Prokaryotic Being is definitely a card that holds a special place in my heart, especially because the first time I ever played it was at, the first time I ever played against this kind of deck was at the ARG finals back in, oh god, that was in August. Yeah, August. It was the day before my birthday. I played against somebody who was playing the Alhama'at Prokaryotic Being deck. We went so far into time and ended up tying him due to Arthur Pendragon, King of the Round Table. So that was a wild duel. It was a wild deck to play against, and I just had to try and recreate it with some of the new tools. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the duel video I had with Scott where this thing kind of steamrolled him. It was not having the removal when you need it for Prokaryotic Being and just getting memed out by a bunch of chances. Never that much fun unless you're the one who's giving it instead of receiving it. But hope you guys, again, enjoyed this. Hope you guys play around with Prokaryotic Being. Send me your builds. Show me what you're doing with it. I would love to see it. So with that being said, this has been Mike from Deep Void Force of Will, signing out.